The stars bent and twisted as reality tore open like a wound in space. From the swirling portal of hyperspace, massive shapes emerged one by one. The Zephyrian Armada's reconnaissance fleet materialized at the edge of a yellow star system, their dark hulls gleaming with alien metals that seemed to drink in the distant starlight. Fleet Commander Vexithera stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's edge, her forearms crossed behind her back as she watched the tactical display come alive with data. Her scaled skin rippled with the deep purple color that indicated focused concentration among her species. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency around her, their webbed fingers dancing across control surfaces that pulsed with bioluminescent readouts. "Report," Vexthera commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems for the Zephyrian Empire. Navigation Officer Kethvar looked up from his station, his large black eyes reflecting the glow of his instruments. "Successful emergence, Commander. All 47 vessels accounted for. We have achieved optimal scanning position at the system's outer edge." "And our target?" Vexithera asked, though she already knew the answer. This system had been marked for investigation after long range. Surveys detected signs of a potentially habitable world orbiting the third planet from the star. "Preliminary scans confirm a Class M world in the habitable zone," reported Science Officer Yilnara from her position at the sensor array. "Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, significant water coverage, and electromagnetic signatures consistent with early industrial development." Vexthara allowed herself a small smile. Early industrial development meant the inhabitants had discovered electricity and basic communication technology, but were still centuries away from achieving spaceflight. Such civilizations were perfect for the Empire's purposes, advanced enough to have developed useful knowledge and infrastructure, but far too primitive to pose any threat to Zephyrian forces. Standard conquest protocol, then, she decided. Deploy sensor drones for detailed planetary mapping. I want to know population centers, resource deposits, and any potential military capabilities before we proceed to the subjugation phase. The fleet had performed this same operation dozens of times before. The Zephyrian Empire had grown vast and powerful by following a simple strategy. Find primitive worlds, study them thoroughly, then offer their inhabitants a choice between peaceful surrender and total annihilation. Most species chose surrender once they witnessed the destruction of one of their major cities from orbit. As the fleet moved deeper into the system, dozens of sensor drones launched from the larger vessels, spreading out in a wide search pattern. These robotic scouts would map every inch of the target world, cataloging everything from weather patterns to the locations of major population centers. Yilnara frowned at her readings as the first drone data began flowing back to the fleet. "Commander, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the outer system." "Define unusual," Vexithera said, moving to peer over the science officer's shoulder at the display screens. "There appears to be a large metallic object in the outer asteroid belt. The signature is definitely artificial, but..." Yilnara paused, manipulating her controls to refine the scan. "It's massive, Commander. Much larger than anything we would expect from a pre-spaceflight civilization." Vexithera studied the data, her mind already working through the possibilities. Perhaps debris from an ancient civilization that once lived in the system. Or possibly a generation ship from another species that failed to reach its destination. "Should we investigate?" asked Weapons Officer Grixthon, his scarred face eager for action. Like many Zephyrian military officers, he had little patience for mysteries that didn't involve explosions. "Eventually," Vexthara decided, "but our primary mission is planetary assessment. Whatever that object is, it has clearly been inactive for a considerable time. If it posed any threat, we would have detected power signatures or defensive responses by now." The fleet continued its methodical approach toward the inner system, following procedures refined through decades of conquest. The Zephyrians had learned to be thorough in their preparations. Rushing into a system without proper intelligence had cost them ships and crews in the past, though never against a primitive species. Hours passed as the sensor drones completed their initial survey of the third planet. The data they transmitted painted a picture of a world remarkably similar to the Zephyrian homeworld: blue oceans, green continents, and swirling white clouds. The electromagnetic signatures confirmed the presence of a technologically active species, though their development appeared to be limited to basic radio communications and primitive satellite networks. "Population estimate?" Vexthara inquired as she reviewed the incoming data. Approximately 7 billion individuals concentrated in large urban centers across 7 major landmasses, Yilnara reported. Industrial capacity appears focused on chemical processing, basic manufacturing, and what appears to be primitive nuclear technology. Nuclear? Grixthon's interest was immediately piqued. Nuclear weapons were often the most advanced military technology possessed by pre-spaceflight species, though they were laughably ineffective against modern shields and armor. Confirmed, the science officer nodded, though their delivery systems appear limited to ballistic missiles with ranges measured in thousands of kilometers rather than interplanetary distances. Vexithara nodded with satisfaction. This would be another straightforward conquest. The inhabitants possessed enough technology to be useful, but lacked any means of threatening the fleet. Within a few months, this world would become another productive member of the Zephyrian Empire, its people serving the greater glory of their new masters. "What about that metallic object in the outer system?" asked Navigation Officer Kethvar. "Should we not investigate it before proceeding with contact protocols?" Vexthara considered the question. Standard doctrine called for investigating any unknown artificial objects before making contact with primitive species. However, the object showed no signs of activity whatsoever, and delaying the mission might give the planetary inhabitants time to detect their presence and attempt some futile resistance. Very well, she decided. Alter course to intercept the unknown object. We will conduct a brief investigation before proceeding to the primary target. I want answers, not mysteries left behind us. The fleet changed direction, 47 warships moving in perfect formation toward the outer asteroid belt, where their sensors had detected the strange metallic signature. As they traveled, additional scans revealed more details about the mysterious object. "Commander," Yilnara called out, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. "The object appears to be some sort of vessel, though its design is unlike anything in our databases. The hull configuration suggests military purposes, but the scale is unprecedented." "How large?" Vexthara demanded. "Over 3 kilometers in length, Commander. The mass readings suggest extremely dense construction, possibly utilizing advanced metamaterials we do not recognize." 3 kilometers. Vexithara felt a chill run down her spine. The largest ships in the Zephyrian fleet measured barely half that length, and they were considered massive by galactic standards. Whatever species had built such a vessel possessed engineering capabilities far beyond what should exist in this apparently primitive system. "Any signs of life? Power signatures? Weapon systems?" she asked. "Negative on all counts, Commander. The vessel appears to be completely inert. No energy readings, no communications, no movement. It might as well be a very large piece of space debris." But Vexthara knew that appearances could be deceiving. In her experience, any species capable of building ships that large was also capable of making them very dangerous indeed. Still, the object showed no signs of activity, and her fleet was more than capable of handling any threat from a single derelict vessel. "Maintain standard approach protocols," she ordered. "All ships to battle readiness, but do not power weapons unless I give specific orders. We investigate first, shoot second." The Zephyrian fleet moved steadily toward their date with destiny, unaware that they were about to encounter humanity's idea of a reasonable response to potential threats. The human battleship Retribution hung in space like a sleeping giant among the asteroids, its massive hull dark and seemingly lifeless. For 3 years, it had maintained its silent vigil at the edge of the Sol system, one of humanity's newest and most powerful guardians. Its crew of 800 souls lived and worked within the ship's vast interior, maintaining systems and training for a war they hoped would never come. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck, watching the distant stars through the reinforced viewport. At 42 years old, she had served in the Earth Defense Force for nearly 2 decades, rising through the ranks to command one of humanity's most advanced warships. Her calm demeanor and sharp tactical mind had earned her the respect of both her crew and her superiors. "Captain," came a voice from behind her. Chen turned to see Lieutenant Commander Marcus Torres, her executive officer, approaching with a tablet in his hands. "We're getting some interesting readings from the outer sensor net." Chen accepted the tablet and studied the display. For the past 6 hours, their long-range sensors had been tracking unusual hyperspace distortions at the system's edge. The patterns were consistent with large-scale fleet movements, though the signatures didn't match any known human or allied vessel designs. Analysis? She asked, though her mind was already working through the implications. Computer projects 40 to 50 vessels of unknown configuration. Torres reported. They emerged from hyperspace approximately 4 hours ago, and have been conducting what appears to be systematic sensor sweeps of the inner system. Chen nodded grimly. Humanity had always known this day would come. For the past century, human exploration fleets had encountered evidence of numerous alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. Most showed signs of having achieved interstellar travel, but none had yet made direct contact with Earth. The consensus among human military planners was that eventual first contact was inevitable, and it might not be friendly. Have they detected us? Chen asked. Negative, Captain. We're running full stealth protocols, and our position in the asteroid field provides additional sensor cover. However, their current trajectory will bring them within direct scanning range within the next few hours. The Retribution represented the latest evolution in human military thinking. Unlike the exploration vessels that had mapped nearby star systems, ships like the Retribution were designed with one purpose in mind: protecting humanity from threats they couldn't yet imagine. Human engineers had learned from studying the ruins of extinct civilizations that the galaxy could be a dangerous place. What's the status of their scanning activities? Chen inquired, moving toward the bridge with Torres following close behind. They've deployed numerous sensor drones throughout the system, Torres explained as they walked through the ship's corridors. Primary focus appears to be on Earth itself, though they're conducting secondary scans of Mars, the asteroid belt, and the outer planets. The bridge of the Retribution was a study in controlled efficiency. 24 officers and technicians worked at their stations, monitoring everything from power distribution to long-range communications. The central command area featured a massive holographic display that could show everything from local tactical situations to galaxy-wide strategic assessments. Commander Hayes. Report, Chen ordered as she took her position in the captain's chair. Sensor Officer Commander Lisa Hayes looked up from her console, her expression tense. The alien fleet is maintaining formation at approximately 30 million kilometers from Earth, Captain. They appear to be following standard reconnaissance protocols: systematic mapping, resource assessment, and what looks like population analysis. Population analysis? Chen's blood ran cold. Studying Earth's population from space suggested the aliens weren't just curious explorers. They were conducting the kind of detailed assessment that preceded either invasion or colonization. Confirmed, Captain. Their sensor sweeps are focusing on major urban centers, military installations, and industrial complexes. This is definitely pre-invasion intelligence gathering. Chen had hoped that humanity's first contact with an alien civilization would be peaceful, but she had trained for this exact scenario. The Retribution and ships like it existed because human planners had studied the archaeological evidence from dozens of dead worlds and drawn some sobering conclusions about galactic politics. Tactical assessment. Commander Blake, she ordered. Tactical Officer Commander David Blake consulted his displays before responding. The alien fleet consists of 47 vessels ranging from escort-class ships to what appears to be a large command vessel. Their technology appears advanced, faster-than-light travel, long-range sensors, and what our computer estimates to be energy-based weapon systems. Can they threaten Earth? Chen asked bluntly. Unknown, Captain. We haven't seen their weapons in action. But based on their ship configurations and energy signatures, they appear capable of orbital bombardment. A fleet that size could cause significant damage to planetary infrastructure. Chen weighed her options carefully. The Retribution was powerful, but it was designed as a defensive weapon, not an aggressive first-strike platform. However, if the alien fleet was planning to attack Earth, waiting for them to make the first move might result in millions of human casualties. Status of the home fleet? She asked. Admiral Morrison's task force is currently conducting exercises near Jupiter, Torres reported. Estimated arrival time at Earth, if recalled immediately, would be 18 hours. 18 hours might be too long if the aliens decided to attack. Chen made her decision based on the fundamental principle that had guided human military doctrine since the establishment of the Earth Defense Force. Earth would never again be defenseless against threats from space. Helm, plot an intercept course for the alien fleet, she ordered. Engineering, bring all systems to full readiness. Tactical, prepare for combat operations but do not arm weapons until I give specific authorization. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, implementing orders that would bring humanity's most advanced warship into direct confrontation with an unknown alien force. The Retribution began moving through the asteroid field with surprising grace for such a massive vessel, its advanced engines providing both speed and stealth. "Captain," Hayes called out from her sensor station, "the alien fleet is altering course. They're moving in our direction." Chen studied the tactical display as red icons representing alien vessels began converging on their position. Either the aliens had detected the Retribution despite its stealth systems, or they were investigating the same area of the asteroid belt for other reasons. "Time to intercept?" she asked. "At current velocities, approximately 43 minutes, Blake reported. Chen activated the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are approaching what may be humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Based on their actions, these aliens may pose a threat to Earth. All personnel are to remain at stations and prepare for potential combat operations. Remember your training, trust your shipmates, and let's show these aliens what human engineering can accomplish." As the Retribution moved steadily toward its encounter with the Zephyrian fleet, automated systems throughout the ship began running final diagnostic checks on weapon systems that had never been fired in anger. Deep in the ship's armored core, the artificial intelligence that managed the battleship's defensive systems activated additional subroutines and began calculating firing solutions for targets it had never seen before. The alien fleet continued its approach, unaware that they were about to encounter a species that had learned some very hard lessons about the importance of being prepared for war. Humanity had studied the ruins of civilizations that had been caught unprepared, and they had no intention of joining them. In the depths of space, two very different civilizations were about to meet for the first time. One had built an empire through conquest and intimidation. The other had built weapons because they had seen what happened to species that couldn't defend themselves. The outcome was about to become very clear indeed. Fleet Commander Vexithara watched the massive alien vessel grow larger on her tactical display as the Zephyrian fleet approached. The closer they got, the more impressive and disturbing the unknown ship became. Its hull was a study in geometric precision, covered in what appeared to be overlapping armor plates that gleamed dully in the starlight. Weapons ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some ancient predator, though none showed signs of being powered or aimed. "Commander," Science Officer Yilnara reported from her station, "detailed scans are revealing some unusual construction techniques. The hull appears to be composed of multiple layers of different materials, including some alloys we cannot identify. The vessel also shows signs of extensive internal compartmentalization. Military construction," Weapons Officer Grixthon observed with professional interest. "This ship was built for war, not exploration or commerce." Vexithara nodded grimly. The vessel's design reminded her of the ancient warships she had studied in military academy, but scaled up to proportions that defied conventional engineering wisdom. Whatever species had built this ship clearly understood the principles of military architecture, even if they had apparently died out long ago. "Any response to our approach?" she asked. "Negative, Commander. The vessel remains completely inert. No power signatures, no communications, no defensive reactions of any kind." The fleet moved closer, maintaining battle formation despite the apparent lack of threat. Standard Zephyrian doctrine called for extreme caution when encountering unknown technology, particularly military technology. Too many promising conquests had been ruined by commanders who underestimated primitive-looking defenses. "Beginning active scanning," Yilnara announced. "Full-spectrum analysis of hull composition, internal structure, and any remaining power systems." The Dominion's Edge and several other ships began bombarding the human battleship with intensive sensor beams, probing every meter of its hull for weaknesses, hidden weapons, or signs of active systems. The scans penetrated deep into the ship's interior, mapping corridor layouts, equipment rooms, and what appeared to be massive power generation facilities. What the Zephyrians didn't realize was that their intensive scanning had triggered dozens of automated alarm systems aboard the Retribution. Deep within the ship's armored core, the artificial intelligence known as Aegis began activating defensive protocols that had been dormant for months. "Captain," Chen felt the subtle vibration through the deck plates as primary power systems came online throughout the ship. "Report," she ordered calmly, though her hands gripped the arms of her command chair. "Aegis has detected hostile scanning activities," Tactical Officer Blake reported. "Multiple alien vessels are conducting deep penetration sensor sweeps of our hull and internal systems." "Classification?" Chen asked. "Computer analysis indicates pre-attack reconnaissance patterns consistent with targeting assessment," Blake responded grimly. "They're mapping our ship for potential weak points." Chen weighed her options quickly. The alien fleet was conducting the exact type of detailed scanning that military forces performed before launching an attack. Either they were being extremely thorough in their scientific investigation, or they were preparing to destroy the Retribution. "Helm, full stop," she ordered. "Tactical, bring defensive systems online but maintain weapons offline. Communications, prepare first contact protocols." Throughout the ship, massive fusion reactors that had been running at minimal power began ramping up to full output. Shield generators that could deflect the energy of small stars started building their protective barriers around the ship's hull. Point defense systems designed to intercept incoming missiles began tracking the alien vessels with mechanical precision. The Zephyrian fleet detected the energy surge immediately. "Commander," Yilnara's voice carried a note of alarm. "The alien vessel is powering up. Massive energy signatures throughout the ship, including what appears to be defensive shield generation." Vexithera felt her blood chill as she watched her tactical display transform. The supposedly dead alien ship was suddenly alive with power signatures that dwarfed anything in the Zephyrian fleet. Worse, the energy pattern suggested technology far more advanced than anything her people possessed. "Analysis of power output?" she demanded. "Impossible to determine exactly, Commander, but the vessel appears to be generating more power than our entire fleet combined." The Retribution began broadcasting on multiple frequencies as its communication systems activated. The messages started with basic mathematical sequences, prime numbers, simple equations, and geometric patterns designed to demonstrate intelligence to any species capable of receiving them. "We're receiving transmissions from the alien vessel," Communications Officer Zarkon reported. "Multiple frequencies, various signal types. Computer analysis suggests attempted first contact protocols." Vexithara found herself facing a situation she had never encountered before. The supposedly primitive species from the inner system had somehow built a warship that made her entire fleet look like toys. Worse, it was trying to communicate, which suggested intelligent beings aboard. "What are they saying?" she asked. "Unknown, Commander. The signals appear to be mathematical in nature, possibly an attempt at establishing communication. However, some of our officers believe the mathematical sequences could be targeting data for their weapons systems." Grixthon leaned forward eagerly. "Commander, I recommend immediate attack while we still have the advantage of numbers. That ship may be powerful, but 47 vessels should be able to overwhelm its defenses." Vexthera hesitated. Military doctrine called for immediate attack when facing superior enemy technology. But the alien vessel was attempting communication. Destroying a ship that was trying to talk to them could provoke a war with a species that clearly possessed advanced military capabilities. "Commander," Yilnara interrupted urgently, "I'm detecting additional power signatures throughout the ship. Whatever they're doing, they're bringing more systems online." On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Chen watched the alien fleet maintain its approach despite her ship's obvious awakening. The fact that they hadn't opened fire suggested either remarkable restraint or remarkable stupidity. "Any response to our communications?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. They're receiving our transmissions but not responding." Chen made her decision. "Aegis, initiate full defensive protocols. All hands to battle stations. If they want to communicate, they can respond to our signals. If they want to fight, we'll be ready." Throughout the battleship, automated systems began bringing the ship's full combat capabilities online. Missile tubes the size of subway tunnels prepared to load their deadly cargo. Railgun systems that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed began charging their magnetic coils. Point defense lasers designed to vaporize incoming threats started tracking the alien vessels with mechanical precision. The Zephyrian fleet detected every system activation. "Commander," Grixthon shouted. "Massive weapon signatures. That ship is arming itself for combat." Vexithera watched in horror as her tactical display showed the alien vessel, transforming from a mysterious derelict into what was obviously one of the most powerful warships ever constructed. The weapon's signatures alone suggested firepower that could destroy her entire fleet. "They're targeting us," Yilnara reported, though this wasn't entirely accurate. The Retribution's weapons were simply acquiring target locks as part of standard defensive procedures. "All ships open fire," Vexithara commanded, making the decision that would seal her fleet's fate. "Concentrate all firepower on that vessel before it can destroy us." The Zephyrian fleet unleashed everything they had. 47 warships fired simultaneously, sending plasma bolts, antimatter torpedoes, and particle beams racing across space toward the human battleship. It was a devastating barrage that could have destroyed a small moon. The weapons struck the Retribution's shields and armor in a spectacular display of explosive energy. For a moment, the human ship disappeared in a brilliant fireball of unleashed destruction. Then the fireball faded, and the Retribution emerged completely unharmed. "Impossible," Vexithara whispered as she stared at her displays. Captain Chen looked at her tactical officer with grim satisfaction. "Well, Commander Blake, it appears they've made their intentions clear. Aegis, you are authorized to return fire. Show them what human engineering looks like when we're properly motivated." The sleeping giant was awake, and it was very, very angry. The silence that followed the failed Zephyrian barrage lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the Retribution began to show the galaxy what happened when humans built something with the specific intention of keeping their species alive. Captain Chen watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction as her ship's weapon systems came fully online. "Aegis Tactical Assessment of Hostile Vessels." The artificial intelligence's synthesized voice filled the bridge with calm precision. 47 enemy vessels detected. Technology assessment. Approximately 2 centuries behind current human military standards. Threat level to this vessel, minimal. Threat level to Earth, if unopposed, significant. Recommendations? Chen asked, though she already knew what the answer would be. Neutralize all hostile vessels to prevent intelligence regarding human capabilities from reaching enemy command structure. Recommend capture of at least 1 vessel for technological assessment and interrogation purposes. Chen nodded grimly. Aegis was designed to think like a strategist as well as a tactician. If this alien fleet was part of a larger force, humanity needed to know what they were facing. Execute neutralization protocol, she commanded. Leave their command vessel intact if possible. Throughout the Retribution, systems that had been built by human engineers who understood that space was a hostile environment began demonstrating their capabilities. The ship's primary armament consisted of 12 massive railgun batteries, each capable of accelerating projectiles to 12% of light speed. When such projectiles struck a target, the results were less like weapons fire and more like controlled nuclear explosions. The first salvo from the Retribution consisted of 24 tungsten slugs, each weighing 50 kilograms and moving fast enough to cross the distance between the ships in under 2 seconds. The Zephyrian fleet had no time to react, no time to maneuver, and no defense against weapons that treated their advanced armor plating like tissue paper. Fleet Commander Vexithara watched in absolute horror as 6 of her ships simply ceased to exist. The alien projectiles struck with such devastating force that her vessels didn't explode or break apart. They simply vanished in brief. Brilliant flashes of vaporized metal and energy. "Evasive maneuvers," she screamed. But her order came too late. The second salvo from the Retribution targeted the larger vessels in the Zephyrian formation. This time, the human battleship fired specialized penetrator rounds designed to punch through heavy armor before detonating inside the target. The results were even more spectacular than the first volley. The Zephyrian dreadnought Conquest's Pride took a direct hit amidships. The penetrator round punched through 17 meters of advanced armor plating, passed through 4 decks of ship interior, and detonated in the vessel's main power core. The resulting explosion tore the ship in half and sent debris flying in all directions. "Return fire. All ships return fire," Vexithara commanded desperately. The surviving Zephyrian vessels launched everything they had at the human battleship. Plasma bolts, antimatter torpedoes, and particle beams streaked across space in a desperate attempt to damage their incredibly powerful opponent. The weapons struck the Retribution's shields and simply disappeared. The ship's defensive systems had been designed by humans who understood that space contained things like gamma-ray bursts, solar flares, and asteroid impacts. Alien weapons that had never faced such defenses were laughably inadequate. "Captain," Tactical Officer Blake reported with professional calm, "enemy weapons are having no measurable effect on our defensive systems." Shield strength holding at 98%. Chen nodded. The aliens' weapons were certainly powerful by galactic standards, but human defensive technology had been developed under the assumption that anything worth defending against would be trying very hard to kill them. "Continue firing," she ordered. "Target their escort vessels first, then work our way up to the larger ships." The Retribution's point defense systems joined the battle, designed to intercept incoming missiles and fighters. Against the smaller Zephyrian vessels, they proved devastatingly effective. Laser batteries that could vaporize incoming projectiles began systematically targeting enemy ships, cutting through their hulls like hot knives through butter. Commander Grixthon watched his tactical display in disbelief, as his weapons had absolutely no effect on the enemy vessel. "Commander, our most powerful weapons are not even scratching their shields. That ship's defenses are beyond anything we've ever encountered." Fexithara felt despair creeping into her mind as she watched her fleet being systematically destroyed. In 30 years of military service, she had never encountered an enemy that was simply immune to her weapons. The technological gap was so vast that this wasn't even a battle. It was an execution. "All ships, retreat," she commanded. Emergency jump to hyperspace, but the human battleship wasn't finished demonstrating its capabilities. "Aegis, deploy interceptor missiles," Chen ordered. "I don't want any of them escaping to report back to their superiors." Deep within the Retribution's armored hull, missile tubes the size of subway tunnels opened to reveal their contents. Each interceptor missile was equipped with its own artificial intelligence, advanced sensors, and a small fusion warhead. They were designed to chase down fleeing enemies and ensure that no hostile force could escape to threaten Earth. 24 missiles launched from the human battleship, accelerating at speeds that would have killed any living pilot. Their AI guidance systems immediately locked onto the fleeing Zephyrian vessels and began pursuit, calculating intercept courses with ruthless efficiency. The first missile caught the Zephyrian destroyer Swiftblade as it attempted to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jump. The interceptor's warhead detonated less than 50 meters from the alien ship's hull, vaporizing the vessel in a miniature sun that briefly outshone the distant star. More missiles found their targets as the Zephyrian fleet scattered in desperate flight. Ships that had terrorized primitive civilizations across the galaxy discovered what it felt like to be helpless prey. Their advanced armor and sophisticated shields proved utterly inadequate against weapons designed by a species that had learned to prepare for the worst possible scenarios. "Commander," Communications Officer Zarkon called out desperately, "the Righteous Fury and Starpiercer have been destroyed. The Noble Conquest is reporting critical damage. We've lost over half the fleet." Fexithara stared at her tactical display in numb shock. In less than 5 minutes, the most powerful reconnaissance fleet in Zephyrian history had been reduced to scattered fleeing remnants. The alien ship hadn't even moved from its original position. "Jump coordinates locked in," Navigation Officer Kethvar reported. "Ready for emergency hyperspace jump." "All remaining ships jump immediately," Fexithara commanded. The surviving Zephyrian vessels tore holes in space and fled into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of their comrades and their complete confidence in Zephyrian military superiority. Captain Chen watched the alien ships disappear from her sensors with mixed feelings. Part of her was satisfied that Earth's defenses had proven so effective. Another part was concerned about what would happen when the fleeing aliens reported back to their superiors. "Damage report," she requested. "No damage to report, Captain," Blake responded. "Shield strength back to 100%. All weapon systems nominal. All defensive systems nominal." Chen nodded with grim satisfaction. The Retribution had performed exactly as designed. It had protected Earth from a superior enemy force, and demonstrated that humanity was not the helpless prey the aliens had expected. "Aegis, analysis of enemy capabilities and probable response," she requested. Enemy. Fleet represented approximately 50 ships with technology roughly equivalent to early human. "Interstellar vessels," the AI responded. "Probable enemy response, retreat to report encounter to superior forces. Estimated time for return with larger fleet, 30 to 90 days. Chen activated the ship's communication system. "Admiral Morrison, this is Captain Chen aboard the Retribution. We have just engaged and defeated an alien reconnaissance fleet. I am transmitting all tactical data for analysis. Recommend immediate alert status for all Earth Defense Forces. The aliens will be back, and they'll bring friends. As the Retribution settled back into its silent vigil among the asteroids, its crew began preparing for the larger conflict that was surely coming. They had given humanity its first victory against an alien threat, but they all knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that Earth's children had grown up, and they had inherited their species' talent for building things that were much more dangerous than they appeared. The hyperspace journey back to Zephyrian space felt like an eternity to Fleet Commander Vexithera. She stood on the bridge of her damaged flagship, staring at tactical displays that told a story of complete and utter defeat. Of the 47 ships that had entered the human system with confident expectations of easy conquest, only 12 had escaped. The rest were expanding clouds of superheated plasma, destroyed by weapons that had seemed almost magical in their devastating effectiveness. Commander, Communications Officer Zarkon reported quietly, "We're receiving priority transmissions from High Command. They're demanding a full report on our mission status." Vexithera felt a chill run down her spine. How could she possibly explain what had happened? How could she tell the Zephyrian High Command that their most advanced reconnaissance fleet had been destroyed by a single ship from a supposedly primitive civilization? "Send preliminary report," she ordered reluctantly. Mission encountered unexpected resistance. Heavy casualties sustained. Full briefing upon return to base. The response came back within minutes, and it was exactly what Vexithera had feared. Emergency recall authorized. Report directly to Supreme Fleet Command upon arrival. Priority Alpha classification. Priority Alpha meant that her report would go directly to the highest levels of Zephyrian military command, possibly even to the Emperor himself. Vexithera had never wanted such high-level attention, especially not under these circumstances. "Time to reach command base?" she asked. 18 hours at current speed, Commander. Navigation Officer Kethvar replied. 18 hours to figure out how to explain the impossible. Meanwhile, aboard the Retribution, Captain Chen was conducting her own analysis of the encounter. The ship's computers had recorded every detail of the battle, from the aliens' initial approach to their final desperate flight. The data painted a clear picture of a species that was technologically advanced but had never encountered serious military opposition. Computer analysis suggests the enemy fleet was conducting standard reconnaissance prior to invasion, Aegis reported. Their weapons and tactics are consistent with a military force accustomed to facing significantly inferior opponents. Which means Earth was probably next on their list, Chen observed grimly. Confirmed, Captain. Sensor logs indicate the enemy fleet was conducting detailed scans of Earth's population centers, military installations, and industrial capacity. Classic pre-invasion intelligence gathering. Chen felt a cold anger building in her chest. These aliens had come to her home system planning to conquer or destroy her species. They had studied Earth's cities like a predator studying prey, completely confident that humanity would be unable to resist their superior technology. They had been very, very wrong. Long-range sensor status, she inquired. All systems nominal, Captain. No contacts detected beyond the system perimeter. However, given the enemy's faster-than-light capabilities, we should expect them to return with reinforcements. Estimated timeline. Unknown, Captain. Depends on enemy force deployment and decision-making processes. Conservative estimate 30 to 90 days. Chen activated the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. Today we faced humanity's first test against an alien military force, and we passed with flying colors. However, this was just the beginning. The aliens who escaped will undoubtedly report back to their superiors, and they will return with larger forces. We must use the time we have to prepare Earth's defenses and warn our colonies. Remember, we are humanity's shield against the darkness of space. Today we prove that our shield is strong. 2 days later, Vexithera found herself standing in the most intimidating room in the Zephyrian Empire, the Supreme Command. Chamber on the capital world of Zephyr Prime. The massive circular chamber featured a raised platform in the center, surrounded by towering seats occupied by the Empire's highest military leaders. Above them all sat Emperor Kethmore himself, his ancient eyes fixed on the disgraced fleet commander. Fleet Commander Vexithera, the Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber with deadly calm. You will now explain how a reconnaissance fleet of 47 ships was reduced to 12 survivors by a single enemy vessel. Vexithara took a deep breath and began her report. She described their arrival in the human system, the discovery of the mysterious vessel, and their decision to investigate. She explained how the ship had appeared to be a derelict until their scanning activities triggered its defensive systems. The enemy vessel demonstrated technology far superior to our own, she continued reluctantly. Their weapons penetrated our strongest shields and armor as if they did not exist. Our most powerful attacks had no measurable effect on their defensive systems. Impossible, growled Supreme Admiral Morgath from his seat. No single ship could withstand the combined firepower of an entire fleet. I thought the same thing, Admiral, Vexithara replied. I was wrong. The enemy vessel possessed defensive capabilities that rendered our weapons completely ineffective. Meanwhile, their offensive systems destroyed our ships with single shots. Emperor Kethamor leaned forward, his expression growing more dangerous. Are you telling me that this supposedly primitive species possesses military technology that surpasses our own? Vexithara felt sweat beading on her forehead despite the chamber's cool temperature. Yes, Your Majesty. The evidence is undeniable. This species has achieved a level of military engineering that far exceeds our capabilities. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembled commanders. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered dozens of star systems through superior technology and tactics. The idea that a primitive species could build ships that made their fleet obsolete was almost impossible to accept. Show us, the Emperor commanded. Vexithara activated the holographic display and began playing sensor recordings from the battle. The assembled commanders watched in stunned silence as the human battleship shrugged off their most powerful weapons and responded with devastating force. They saw Zephyrian ships, vessels that had conquered worlds, simply vanish under the impact of human railgun rounds. By the ancestors, whispered Fleet Admiral Yarthek, those projectile weapons, the kinetic energy levels are impossible. Computer analysis suggests the enemy projectiles were traveling at approximately 12% of light speed, Vexithara reported. Impact energy was equivalent to tactical nuclear weapons. And their defensive systems? Emperor Kethamor inquired. Unknown technology, Your Majesty. Our weapons appeared to have no effect whatsoever. The enemy ship emerged from our combined barrage completely undamaged. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian Empire, which had built its power on technological superiority, had encountered a species that made them look primitive by comparison. What else did you observe about this species? The Emperor asked quietly. Their initial response was to attempt communication, Your Majesty. They broadcast mathematical sequences that appeared to be first contact protocols. We interpreted these as possible targeting data and opened fire. You attacked a ship that was trying to communicate? Supreme Admiral Morgath's voice carried a note of horror. The ship's power-up sequence triggered our combat protocols, Vexithara explained weakly. We believed we were under immediate threat. Emperor Kethamor sat back in his throne, his expression thoughtful and deeply troubled. So we attacked a species that was attempting peaceful first contact, and they responded by demonstrating that they could destroy our entire fleet at will. Yes, Your Majesty. And then they allowed the survivors to escape. Vexithara nodded reluctantly. They could have destroyed all of our ships, Your Majesty. They chose not to. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications of this revelation. They let you go so you could report back to us. They wanted us to know what they were capable of. That appears to be correct, Your Majesty. Computer, the Emperor commanded, analyze all available data on this human species. I want to know everything about their capabilities, their technology, and their military deployments. The central computer began processing thousands of sensor readings, intelligence reports, and data fragments from the encounter. After several minutes, a synthesized voice filled the chamber. Analysis complete. The human vessel represents technology approximately 500 years in advance of current Zephyrian capabilities. Based on observed manufacturing techniques and material science, the probability of additional vessels of similar capability is 97%. How many ships like this might they possess? The Emperor asked. Unknown. However, analysis of the target species' industrial capacity suggests they could support construction and maintenance of numerous vessels of this class. Emperor Kethmore stood slowly, his ancient frame radiating authority and barely controlled fear. Fleet Commander Vexithera, you have brought us the most important intelligence in the history of our empire. We have encountered a species that possesses the capability to destroy us completely, and we attacked them first. Your Majesty, what are your orders? The Emperor looked around the chamber at his assembled commanders, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. We prepare for war with a superior enemy, and we pray to the ancestors that they are more interested in defending their territory than expanding it.